Well, it is a beautiful Texas morning. What a day. I'm just driving out of my hotel. I did it slightly differently this year because Austin is packed over the Formula One weekend. Not only because of Formula One, but because there's also a big, just going over a bump there, a big football match on. And it was fun, but I wanted to get a different feel for Texas and Austin this year, so I'm actually staying at the John Newcomb Tennis Ranch, which is not far from the track, oblivious to the Formula One world here, completely different world, lots of athletic tennis players and coaches around, which is a lot of fun. John Newcomb, I know this has nothing to do with motor racing at all, but John Newcomb was one of my childhood heroes when I grew up in Australia. Saw him winning at Manly in the Pacific Championships many times, and amazing now to see this thing he's built, this ranch he's built here in not far from Austin in Texas, the John Newcomb Tennis Ranch, and good luck to him. Thank you very much, Mr. Newcomb. And it kind of puts into context, I suppose, what is on my mind right now, which is we started the show with a lovely look at the Lotus 43 BRM. Thanks very much again to Andy Middlehurst for that. What a superb work of art that car is today. Although I'm sure at the time Jimmy Clark didn't think of it as a work of art. He thought it was a work of toil. And I should make one correction straight away. Thank you very much to one of the Twitter followers, Dead Man Woking, great name that, who pointed out, of course, that it was a Climax Flat 16, not a Climax Flat 12, that didn't race at the end of the 1.5 litre formula. I'm going to let somebody pass because I don't want to go too quickly. I'm just trying a new camera mount, and I hope it's not too difficult for in terms of vibration and stuff. Always trying new things on the show. Yeah, and so that was, we look ahead to America. We get here to America, we get excited because the American Grand Prix is a huge race, always has been since its inception in the late 50s. It was always the big prize money Formula One race of the season, and now it's on the calendar again, and we know the Circuit of Americas, and the teams are embracing it in the sense that they love racing in America and they feel it's very important to have a race in America. But for me, there is still a difference between this United States Grand Prix and the Grand Prix that we used to have, that's Grand Prix plural, pronounced singularly, at Watkins Glen and thereafter, and the heritage that came with Phil Hill, Dan Gurney, Mario Andretti, Richie Ginther is not yet being grabbed hold of by the Formula One world. I'm on record of saying several times now that I think Formula One is guilty of not doing enough to promote its brand, the Formula One brand, that is, in all these countries in which it's racing, in which it's trying to pave new markets. And it's not only America, it's China, it's India, it's Korea. And just on that subject of China, we've had a Chinese Grand Prix on the calendar for a long time now. I think it's kind of sad that this weekend at the Macau Grand Prix, there is only one Chinese driver competing. He actually qualified last. I think that's a sad testimony to Formula One, and I'm not that interested in distinguishing between what are the Formula One endorsed championships, i.e. it's GP3, not F3. It behoves everybody in motorsport to understand that the future is important, and that if we want to generate income and new sponsorship and new business in countries like China, we've got to invest. We've got to do more than just go there, build a super circuit at their expense, and then race and hope that magically it'll all work. Why are there no more Chinese drivers? We've had a Grand Prix on the calendar for long enough now for there to be a couple of really quick Chinese drivers, at least at GP2 World Series level, and certainly more than one competing from the back of the grid in the Macau Grand Prix this weekend. Anyway, that's a slight tangent, although it is related to what I'm saying. We have young American drivers out there now doing well. Rossi won in Abu Dhabi. Connor Daly has sweated blood and tears to get to where he has so far. It's immaterial who is the better of the two, or whether there are talented young Americans out there, but we need to do more, I think, than just turn up and race. And it's very sad for me that this American Grand Prix is followed immediately by Brazil, because it would have been so nice to have, for the Formula One world to have hung around if they felt so inclined, and and done a bit more to promote the brand. Anyway, in that tone, I'm going to be talking today to a variety of Americans about what they think of this Grand Prix and how it's going to go from here and how it can grow from here. And I think the first will surprise you. I've never actually spoken to him before, but I know it's going to be a lot of fun. I've always wanted to chat to him. We've communicated by Twitter a lot, and that'll be coming up in a minute. Equally, later on tonight, I'm lucky enough to be addressing a group of American fans who are coming to an event here, and it'll be interesting to get their opinion on this Grand Prix and how it can go. Don't think it's gloom and doom. It's not. At the track on Thursday afternoon in the pit walkabout, where the fans can actually come into the pit lane for a price, it was superb to bump into virtually everybody. That I couldn't walk more than a couple of steps without somebody coming up and saying, "Hey," asking a question about Formula One, and usually quite well informed, technical type question, typical of the American race fans. And I love being in America. I love doing Formula One in America, and I love breathing its heritage. But it's hard in Texas. I was 10 miles from the circuit on Thursday afternoon, taking a different route, and I got a little bit lost and stopped at a filling station and said, Circuit of Americas. And sadly, the attendant had never even heard of it. They said, "Oh, I know there's a racetrack somewhere out there." No idea. And it is a big state, Texas, but 2 years on, it would be nice if Formula One had done more. And I keep saying Formula One because I think the Americans have done enough to build this amazing facility in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Texas. And it behoves Formula One now to maximize that, not only to their advantage, but also to the advantage of the Americans, and put on the show that we need to do. Anyway, that's when I say the show, I don't mean this weekend. I mean over the winter, August break, Christmas, whatever it is, chat shows, charity events, go-karts, whatever. Let's get on with it and promote Formula One in these countries. Anyway, that's my little thing. It's a beautiful day, so we won't ruin it anymore with any more negative criticism, and we will chat to some interesting people. Antonio, thanks very much for joining us. Great to see you, first of all.
You too.
And I've led up to this by not telling our viewers who it is we're talking to. So I hope you don't mind if I embarrass you by saying that you are, in your own right, a very successful, well-known actor. But to all us motor racing fans, you are, you're probably sick to death of people saying it, but your father was actually Nino Barlini in Grand Prix. And what an amazing thing for you to have grown up with that. And anyway, that was it. I just wanted to introduce you first of all. But Antonio, to get down to it,
Yes.
you're in Hollywood now. You're in America. We have a US Grand Prix. I was interested to know what this race means to you, and how is Formula One perceived amongst you and your buddies there?
Well, I've been a passionate Formula One, viewer, fan my entire life. So I brought this passion from Italy all the way to the States. I remember during the 80s and 90s, it was like kind of secret. You would stay up in the middle of the night and watch these races, and they weren't really televised at the time, but somehow you would find a way to hear about it. And then Speed Channel came in on board and started televising at 4 or 5 in the morning, and the whole thing kind of just started being a secret group of people that watched this Formula One, this intriguing kind of racing that you would never get to see the drivers, but you kind of hear about it. And it was it was like space shuttles, you kind of like, it was this secret cult. And it was racing, but it was beyond racing in ways. And they kind of grew, and it got bigger and bigger. And then obviously I was the spokesperson for the Indianapolis Grand Prix back in early 2001 and 2. Yeah. And that was great. But that kind of fell apart because of all the mistakes and things that happen in the States. So and now that it's back in Texas, it's a great thing. I think it's good for the sponsorships, and it's good for the fans. There's a lot of fans. I think America, I wish sooner or later it would get bigger and bigger. And I think it has. I think, NBC bought the rights for Formula One. They're doing a great job televising it. They're televising it and re-showing it throughout the day. I think it's important to do that. And I think everybody's loving Texas. For some reason, I was kind of skeptical. It's like, why are you going to Texas in the middle of nowhere? But it seems to have worked out greatly, and the track is phenomenal. And I think it's good for the fans. I think it's because it's situated in a place where you have South America fans traveling to Texas. It's not that far. I think it's been great. I hope that New York works out. I think that goes through, and I think we can get that Grand Prix as well. But it's really important that the States stays here, Formula One stays here. It's the greatest racing sport event in the world. And I think for anyone out there that hasn't been to a Grand Prix, you got to go and check it out for yourself. Yeah.
Antonio, how do your mates feel about it, your buddies feel about it? And that's first question. And secondly, how big or small was Rush as a movie in Hollywood for you?
I think Rush was a disappointment. I think it could have been a lot better. And I think it did the best that it could under the circumstances. And the acting was great. The special effects, it's hard to tell because, in my opinion, I think they should have picked a different kind of race car driver against another. James Hunt wasn't that famous, wasn't that popular in the States. I don't think half of the population in this country knew anything about him. They knew about Niki Lauda more than anything. But as far as Formula One and my buddies, they have this perception that it's an easy sport, that the guy wins all the time. Now you have Vettel, breaking every record, and but it's I have to kind of educate people how the sport really works and how it works. It's a lot more complicated than that. You have the greatest drivers in the world racing against each other, but it's so technical, and it's about the team, and it's about how the engineer and the rest of the team works with the driver and tires and setup. So, I mean, and when I tell them that and I give them a little history on that, then they get like, oh, okay, now I get it. But once you see it first, it's not that interesting to them because they want to see a lot of passing. They want to see things. It's like soccer, for example. It's like the racing version of soccer. Soccer is like, you have to educate them about that too because there's not a lot of scoring. There's not a lot of numbers on the scoreboard. But it's an intense game where you're racing for, you're running for 90 minutes. So it's the same thing, Pete.
Yeah.
But I think NBC is introducing it in a different way, and I think they're having fun with it, and I think it's working out.
Antonio, you said you grew up with the sport. Is that because of your the role your father played in Grand Prix with Frankenheimer?
Yes, and also my uncle was a race car driver. I became a race car driver. I love racing. I think that once you get to know the sport the way I did by going to the Grand Prix and hanging out with the drivers and stuff, man, it becomes, there's nothing else. There is nothing else that I really loved as much as I love Formula One. There's nothing. If I could pick a sport that I would choose over my acting career, I would pick Formula One racing. I mean, that's it. There's nothing like it. It's just it's a beautiful sport in every aspect. And once you get involved, and I was like, I grew up. There's my dog barking. I grew up with.
What sort of dog is it?
This one is a Yorkie. Yeah, it's.
He's making a big noise for a little dog.
Yeah. But I'm very excited about what Formula One is doing in the last year. Like next year they're bringing the turbos and the V6. That's very exciting. I think that drivers, in my opinion, will have a hard time driving those cars.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to make it interesting. So I think that, with the qualifying, 3 qualifying, it's been really cool. Bringing it to the States and other parts of the world. I mean, look, who would have thought that we're racing in the Middle East? We're racing with maybe Russia, who knows, India. I mean, that's phenomenal. So I really love it.
Well, in many ways, next year is going to be a little bit like 1966, which was the year of your dad's movie when they changed the engine formula. They went to the big 3-liter cars then.
Yeah.
Tell me, how is your dad, and what does he think? Does he have any interest at all in Formula One? What was life like for him after Grand Prix?
Me and my dad have the same passion. Obviously, I got it in the genes from him. My father was a good friends with a lot of race car drivers like Jackie Stewart and Phil Hill and those guys. And then we became friends with Michael Schumacher, and we started hanging out with those guys. And all we do is talk about Formula One, Pete. I mean, every time it comes over to the house, the first thing we talk about is who won the last Grand Prix, what happened, Obviously talk about Ferrari and the disappointments and the things that they're going through right now, because we're Italians and we're red-blooded, man, and we're just like all Ferrari, and we're very open about how we feel about that company, because my father, like you said, raced for that company in the movie, but also was a good friend with Enzo Ferrari, and so that's really dear to heart. And hopefully next year they'll change some things around and come back stronger.
Did your dad enjoy making that movie?
Oh my goodness! I mean, my dad loved racing before he got that part, and then when he got that job, he started hanging out with this amazing director by the name of John Frankenheimer, and this guy was just a beast. He knew cars, he knew how to shoot them, he knew how to just place the camera and do things that they were never done before.
And what do you think when you look at Grand Prix now? How do you think it stands up?
It's the greatest, if not the only, race car movie worth watching. With a story, it was shot in Cinescope. It was just bigger than life. It was MGM. It was. I watched that movie a million times growing up. I still do now. It is what it is. I think that to do a movie about Formula One nowadays, you have to be a true fan, and you have to be a passionate fan and really understand the sport inside out, and understand what these guys go through and the training and what kind of lifestyle they have. And I think these directors, even going back to Steve McQueen, how he did 24-hour Le Mans, that was one race, and he should have done Grand Prix. Yeah. And he almost did, and then they got James Gardner. So
yeah. It was a very frustrating weekend for me a couple of years ago at the Belgian Grand Prix. Because I was staying down in Bastogne. I wanted to stay there because it's got a lot of historical significance from World War II. And I was astonished to see on one of the little town hall notice boards that Francois Hardy was in concert, or she had an art exhibition on at Bastogne that weekend. Nobody thought to invite her to the Grand Prix. I tried to get there. I couldn't. It didn't fit in with the schedule. But that chemistry between your dad and Francois Hardy, we still talk about it in the media center, wherever, at any Grand Prix these days.
Well, because it was real. My dad was, what you see is what you get. He was that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he would race James Gardner to the set every morning, and he would have a smaller car. James Gardner was the lead. He had the big Corvette. They gave him everything he wanted. My father had a Fiat Abarth, I think it was a Ritmo, one of those, and he beat him. He would beat him to the set, because my father would, he was a very aggressive driver. And people really don't know about my dad, but my dad did all the driving in Monaco and and Spa. He did all the driving himself with really little. They went to the training school down in England, but it wasn't really. It was a week, 2 weeks of training. But my father had this racing in his blood. And he still does right now. He has a really heavy foot. He can really drive to this day.
We're coming up, not that far away from the 50th anniversary of Grand Prix, and when that happens, I'd love to get him on the show as well. Just one final thought was I always thought your dad looked the best in terms of his helmet and goggles, and everything looked perfect. It was obviously modeled on Lorenzo Bandini, but he looked great in that helmet. Everybody else looked slightly uncomfortable, but your dad had it perfect on the Lorenzo Bandini look.
Yeah, well, the passion that he has now, he had it then. My whole family, his brothers, his sisters, we love Formula One. We still do. And so my dad, it was a dream come true for him to be in a movie like that. And he just had a great time. He was very fit. He was very healthy at the time. He was very, like I said, when he drives that motorcycle into the club and sees Francois for the first time, that was him. That's who my dad is.
Wonderful.
And there was a scene before that where he actually rides that motorcycle into a go-kart track. You ever seen it?
Yeah.
It was cut out. Yeah. But there was a go-kart race, and my father jumps in and rides the motorcycle and wins the race.
Brilliant. Yeah. Antonio, just to finish off, what are your projects at the moment? What's keeping you busy?
I just finished doing a TV show for FX called The League. It's a comedy. And then before that, I was in another TV show, Castle, for ABC. and also I'm developing to create a show about, I've always loved, obviously racing, but one of the racing that I really enjoy is the Porsche Cup that I had the chance to race in. And I want to do a show just about the whole series of the Porsche Cup and me racing in it for the entire season, which actually comes with the Formula One because I'd be racing on the same tracks on the same weekend. So I'm looking to do that in 2014.
Well, good luck with that. I know you were very, very upset about Shaun Edwards' accident. We communicated on Twitter over that, and you knew Shaun, right?
I did know him, and I have to. That gets me, he was a great guy. He was just a great kid. And I still have my the email and the text that I had that he sent to me before he left. He was on the plane down to Australia, and I still look at it, and it brings tears to me. And I wish his family, his loved ones, his fiance. Everybody who ever knew this kid. Not only was he a talent, but he was just a wonderful soul, and I God bless him. I miss him. I do.
Antonio, wonderful to talk to you as ever. Thanks so much for spending a bit of time, and enjoy the race this weekend. And we'll have you on the show again very soon with your dad. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.